Well, hello everyone. Good to see you all here today. It's time for another session of our boot camp. I'm so excited because today is all about responsive design. Been a couple days since I saw y'all. Would love to check in. How's this week been? We did a bunch of positioning, accessibility. What was yesterday? Something attribute selectors. Yeah, how are we feeling? Would love to check in. In the meantime, a little bit of housework before we start. If you're tuning in for the very first time, hi. My name is Carmen. Together with Etta and Jess, we are doing this free web development bootcamp, and we are on our we got like 2.5 weeks left, something like that. Time is flying, y'all. But if you are journaling for the first time and you're like, oh gosh, I missed it all, no, you didn't. You absolutely did not. In fact, you can catch all of the recordings so far on our YouTube channel. If you go to youtube.com/at Bad Website Club, go there, recordings. You can go to our Discord channel. If you go to discord.gg/all caps KVU, lowercase m, all caps VXA. Our schedule is on our website. If you go to badwebsite.club/bootcamps/spring-2026, you'll find it there. And finally, most important, by joining this bootcamp, as always, you are agreeing to abide by our code of conduct. If you go to badwebsite.club/code-of-conduct, you'll find it there. And yeah, I think that covers everything. Just gonna check in. How are people feeling? Let's see. Not read anything. Just finish reading Flexbox. Mel says, I have a lot more questions. Would you like me to add them in now so you can go through them later if we have time? Yeah, sure. Etta, would you mind please bookmarking them for me? That's a thumbs up. Thank you, Etta. I pronounce it Sinek. Cool. Good to know. And yeah, well, I guess people are just excited and eager to get into responsive design. And let me bring it up. Just going to share my screen and tell you a little bit about what we'll be covering. So when we're making websites these days, is Spirited Away my favorite? Oh, Hizao film. I like Spirited Away a lot. My wife made that. So let's I'm more of a crocheter myself. Let's get into responsive web design. So nowadays, most of the web development you're doing is responsive, or at least should be. So a lot of what we'll be covering today, you're going to be seeing a lot of in your day-to-day work with making websites. Lucy, feeling a bit behind the ball. So there's so much live stuff now about coding, and this class has become my happy place. That makes me very happy to hear. And just to remind you, there is no timeline here other than the live sessions themselves, but the rest, like, you can take at your own pace, and please use the Discord to share stuff. Cool. So yes, today the reading was, what is responsive web design? How do media queries work? Yay, media queries. What are media breakpoints? And what is mobile first approach in responsive web design? So we'll be going through those today. So let's go right into it. We've got three main components to responsive design, which are fluid grids. That is really focusing on the responsiveness of it. And it's in the name. So, we've learned about relative units versus fixed or absolute units. And this is where the relative units is really going to come in handy, because as we've seen, for example, just today, when I'm increasing or decreasing the size of my screen like this, the whole website is responding, responding to the size of my screen. You can see, for example, here, look at that. Does that look like a Flexbox to y'all, or is it just me? My website is responding to the size of my screen. And by using relative units as we do here, we're keeping that in check and giving the user the flexibility to be able to see what they want. Because I bet you've seen, I am going to Mexico later this year. And one of my travel partners, it needs a visa. And so I went to the Mexican consulate website, and right there, big letters, do not use this website on the phone. And it's really not designed for a phone. Why? Because the website is not built responsively. So this is not a knock on the Mexican consulate, mind you. A lot of like government websites or a lot of like consulate websites tend to be pretty bad about this. The Chilean one doesn't even have a website through which you can book an appointment. So anyway, I'm Chilean for context. Anyway, so yes, allowing content to resize is that fluid grid. Then we've also got flexible images as an important part, making sure that images are sized within their containers and don't overflow. And then we've got media queries, which is a big chunky part of responsive web design. Applying different styles specifically based on the device's viewport width. Remember, the viewport is what we see, right? Not just the window, because remember, if it's a mobile phone, there's no window. It's what we see, how much of the website we see without for example, the bottom part removed, or, if I think some phones allow you to have like, some phones allow you to have like split screens or iPads or whatever. Anywho, and media queries are great because they respond to most of the settings of your device that go beyond the viewport width. We're going to see as well. I'm really excited. So some CSS features we've already seen for doing responsive web design, one being CSS Flexbox. So with Flexbox, we've been able to see that we can sort out the layout, remember, one-dimensionally of elements on our website that wrap onto next lines, or again, let me show that here, or space themselves out accordingly to be able to give us a nice layout. That's all Flexbox magic. There's also, let me go back down. There's also CSS Grid, which I'm not going to get into too much today, beyond saying it exists. And I'll see you on Tuesday for covering Grid. I'm very excited. There's also the calc function, which allows us to use actual calculations, for example, 100% minus 20 pixels, to have, more variable layouts, and using source set or SRC set for images for different sizes, because sometimes you don't need a big image. On a smaller device, you're probably, or on a device with lower resolution, I should say, you're going to need a smaller image. So having a source set is great. I remember back in the day, it was a lot harder to do that sort of thing. I should warn you all, it is very warm here in Vienna. So yeah, that's sort of like the ins and outs of responsive web design and its use in CSS. In the example, they're going to show us how to use CSS Grid responsively. So what I'm going to ask you, friends, is don't worry too much about what the grid is doing yet, but let's focus instead on the concept of the media queries, if I'm not mistaken, which I am. Fantastic. So actually, I'm going to take all of this right away and yoink it, put it into HTML editor, my good friend. So there's our grid. Grid container, item 1, item 2, item 3. So 3 divs inside of a div. We don't need this. Thank you very much. Let's go back and take the styles. And this is going to be the important part here. Again, let's not concern ourselves too much with the grid itself, but rather the media queries. So let me see. No, that font size is way too small. Why did nobody tell me? I'm teasing. So we have here the grid container, which sets its display to grid. Again, let's not worry about what grid does, okay? Grid template columns is one column, right? So this grid has one column. And there's 20 pixels of a gap between each item. And again, I know this is annoying, but bear with me. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, right now, that our grid has one column. However, what we have here is an at rule. Now, if you remember at rules from when we last hung out, at rules allow us to tell the browser, not the CSS engine, but the browser, hey, apply this before you start doing any CSS stuff. So this at rule is called media. And this is a media query. Now, media queries are special rules that can be applied based on what kind of media we're using and a specific condition. We'll get into more of that in a bit. Just remember the condition part, because we're saying, hey, when the viewport is at least 768 pixels wide, then apply this CSS. If you're familiar with a little bit of programming, you could think of this as like an if statement. Hey, if I'm on a screen that's at least 668 pixels, then this CSS gets added to the general CSS. But in that case, there would be two declarations for grid container, but given that this one comes later, it means that this attribute grid template columns, which is now saying this is two columns, I'll get to your question in a second, Mel. In this attribute for grid columns will be applied over this one, which means we will have two columns. So let's inspect. Inspect. So take a look at this. Right now our CSS says, hey, this is, how big is it? Hang on. How do I do that? Oh yeah, I need my box model. Yeah. So right now this container is 207 pixels wide. Okay? So it's not 768 pixels, it's 200. So it applies this style. But watch what happens when I tell the media query actually start at 150 pixels. Now watch. The layout changed. Let's select our container again. Watch what happened. Hey, grid container, this is crossed out. Why is it crossed out? Because this media query got applied. Hey, starting at 150 pixel width for the whole viewport, apply this CSS. So now the grid container is one column wide. Again, don't worry about this syntax. We're going to get there on Tuesday. Okay? Now take a look at this one here. This media query, and I'm sorry, it's a bit, let me just reduce this a little bit. Okay. So we have another media query here that says, hey, when it's at least 1024 pixels, then the grid template columns should have, the grid should have 3 columns. But of course, our width here is 300 pixels. Sorry, our whole, what am I doing? I'm looking at this. Our whole page is 320 pixels. I can't help wondering what FR stands for. I promise you will know, but not today. Can you all promise me to be patient and wait until Tuesday for grid? I know. I don't know why we're talking about grids. We're showing grid as an example, but bear with me. Keep your grid questions for Tuesday. I beg you. Fractional, by the way. 1 fraction. FR. Not for real. But I beg you, bear with me. Okay. Now again, if I reduce this to 200, okay, so if say starting at 200 pixels, I want it to be 3 columns. It'd be 1 French. Part of my family's from France. Anyway, let's look again at our div. So right now our div is 300 pixels big, but look at this, look at this, look at this. This is getting overridden. And this media query saying, hey, when you're at least 150, that's getting overridden as well, because this media query takes precedence because it's starting at 200 pixel width for the viewport. That's what a media query is. Okay? Forget the grid, just the media query. So that's how media queries work. Let's do some Q&A. Got a lot to cover today. So who can tell me, what is the primary goal of responsive web design? 1, to create separate versions of a website for desktop and mobile, to ensure websites adapt to different screen sizes and devices, to increase the loading speed of websites on mobile devices, or to simplify the design process for web developers. People are saying number 2, correct. How does CSS Flexbox contribute to responsive web design? By providing a way to create complex grid layouts, by allowing easy manipulation of one-dimensional layouts, by automatically resizing images for different screen sizes, or by enabling the use of media queries. In the meantime, just want to answer your latest question, Mel. Are the items in a grid container automatically distributed across grid columns? So when there are 3 columns, each item will be shown in each column? Yes, that is correct. But again, we'll go into that in depth on Tuesday. Good question, though. One-dimensional layouts. Yes, thank you. In responsive web design, what is the primary advantage of using CSS Grid over older layout methods? It allows for the creation of print style sheets. It provides more flexibility in creating complex 2-dimensional layouts. It automatically adjusts font sizes for different devices, or it reduces the need for JavaScript in responsive designs. What do we think? Oh, sorry. Once again, it is the second one. Thank you very much, people. Let's see our answers. And that's good. We'll pat ourselves on the back. Pat, pat. And let's continue. Because next we'll be covering media queries, which, as I said, so excited. I love media queries because media queries offer so much more flexibility than you would think. As I said, when specifying a media query using the @ rule, because it's an @ rule, we specify a media type or media features, right? Now, before we look at the media type, I want to look at something again from our example. Notice that in our media queries, we're not specifying the media type. We're just specifying the condition. This is because by default, they will be applied to all. Now, you might be thinking, what is print for? This is my favorite. You can have specific CSS that applies when printing a website. I do this with my website. There's a CV page on my website where you go to print. When you go to print it, it removes a bunch of extra colors and effects that aren't needed in print, and really leaves it just for the page. I wonder if I can show it to you, just out of interest. Do I have it here? I wonder if thank you, Etta. I wonder if it's going to show. I kind of hope it does. Like you can see, like I've got the color lavender in the background, a picture, a bunch of stuff about me, some kudos, blah, 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 blah. Now, if I go to print, I hope it shows it. Does it show it? No! No, why? It looks so nice. Hang on. Maybe I can save it as a PDF. Let me try that. How do I do this? No, you know what? Y'all are just gonna have to try it out yourselves. Change browser. Don't tell me what to do. I like Vivaldi. No, it doesn't matter. But if you go to printed, you can see that, for example, the background is removed, the image is removed, and so on and so forth, which is super handy. And you can also specify, for example, that it's specifically for screens, right? Please change browser. No, I like Vivaldi. So, oh, look at that. There are some old, that's what I did. I pressed Control P. It didn't show the pop-up. It's not super helpful, but never mind. I'm going to let y'all try it out. Yeah, there's some older types like handheld NTV that are now deprecated, meaning don't use them. They're not really, they're kind of deprecated in this case means we don't officially support them anymore, but it still works. So yeah, we've already seen some examples. For example, minimum width. And notice, it's for screen and the minimum width of 768. You can specify for the 16:9 aspect ratio. If you're not familiar, it's 16 pixels across, 9 pixels down. I think that's what it means. It's for resolution. No, not for resolution, for the distribution of pixels. A famous 16:9 aspect ratio resolution is 1080p. Orientation, I actually didn't know that. Yeah, so you can specify which CSS to apply if your website is in landscape or portrait. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, resolution. Hover. Whether the primary input mechanism can hover over elements. Cool. Styles for devices that support hovering. Yeah, because like a phone isn't going to support hovering. That's cool. Prefers color scheme. We covered this one. For example, prefers colored scheme dark. This is really handy for when you want to have a dark mode, for example, but don't really want to. So like for example, my website does automatically adapt to whether you're using it in dark mode or light mode. And I let the user have that preference based on their browser. You can also combine lots of them. So for example, if it's we'll come back to your question. Min width and orientation landscape. If you want to target multiple media queries, you can separate them with a comma. And as said, CSS still cascades. So when we're applying media queries to make something mobile first, we write our mobile CSS first, and then for the minimum width, this is where your question comes in, then we apply for bigger devices. So what is the difference between min width and max width? Also, which method is more preferable between the min and max? So great question. Actually, I'll show you. Let's come back here. So once the viewport is 150 pixels wide, we apply 2 columns. Now let's look at it the opposite way. Max width means it's going to apply up until the viewport is 150 pixels wide. Does that make sense? So if I make this smaller, watch what happens. Once it hits less than 150 pixels, it's going to apply the 2-column approach. So in a sense, let me just switch these around. Bear with me. These are equivalent. This is equivalent to the other way around with min width, right? Here we're saying, hey, the grid has 2 columns, but up until it's 150 pixels wide, it should have only 1. The other way around says, and I know this is a little bit to wrap your head around. By default, the grid is always 1 column. But once it's wider than 150 pixels, then it's 2 columns. So which method is preferable? Mobile first, i.e., meaning we write our mobile CSS first, right? And then minimum, starting at a minimum, you have the CSS meant for bigger devices. So in responsive web design, in mobile first responsive web design, we prefer min. I hope that makes sense. Play around with it some more. All right, let's do some Q&A. Let me just make this a bit bigger. And then I want to show you some more types of media queries because I really love this stuff. So which of the following is not a commonly used media type in modern CSS? All, print, screen, or handheld? Media queries and DN. What do we think? Number 4, thank you. Next, what does the orientation media feature check for? The physical orientation of the device, whether the viewport is wider than it is tall or vice versa, the direction of text on the page, or the geographical orientation of the user? Once again, what do we think? Number 1, the physical orientation. Thank you. In a media query, what is the purpose of using the AND operator? To combine multiple CSS properties, to add 2 numeric values together, to combine multiple media features or types, or to create a logical OR condition? What do we think? Number 3, thank you very much. Looks like one of them is wrong, and it's this one here. So the question once again is, what does the orientation media feature check for? Physical orientation of the device is not correct. Think about how this feature relates to how content is displayed on a screen. Number 2, whether the viewport is wider than it is tall or vice versa. That makes sense to me. Thank you, me can't spell. Thank you very much. Pat, pat. I want to come to your question. You are asking, where are you? There you are, Khalid. Why mobile first design rather than developing for larger screens and then adapting for mobile? Me can spell says it's easier to start from small and then adapt upwards, right? I don't know about easier. You have 2 options, right? Either from smaller upwards or from larger down or smaller. I guess the question would be, correct me if I'm wrong, it's it feels more conceptually feasible to design for a smaller screen because we can imagine a smaller screen because we have a mobile device. And we can imagine how smaller devices can get while they're still viable. But how big is large? Are we talking 4K TV? Are we talking one of those ad screens in like a, what's that place in New York City with all the ads? You know what I mean? Like, or on a big screen in a stadium, right? Or on the side of the space station. You know what I mean? Starting from a smaller device that everybody has access to, or most people have access to, seems a lot more realistic, especially when you think about the fact that most internet consumption these days is done on a mobile device. In fact, the number one operating system in computing these days is KaiOS, which is a mobile operating system. The ISS has a screen on the side. No, that was just me having bad examples for things. I apologize. But yeah. Oh, yeah, Lucy. I think more people use mobiles and desktops or whatever in their day-to-day. Yep. I think mobile has more issues if you solve those. Desktop is easier, for example, the hardware capabilities and the proximity of other elements such as battery elements on mobile UI. Linux, I don't think Linux is the most used operating system anymore. KaiOS, most used OS. I think it is. I could be wrong. Oh, it is Linux. My bad. And KaiOS is now third. My bad. Most people have adopted smartphone these days. A couple of years ago, it was KaiOS. My point is mobile. So, yes, let's move on. Sorry. Next up, we've got media breakpoints. And you'll see this commonly. I do this on my website as well. Media breakpoints are at what point should your CSS change depending on your viewport size, using media queries to do this. For example, you'll see media breakpoints like going up to 640 pixels for mobile devices, 641 to 1024 pixels wide for tablets, and then starting at 1025 for desktops. You'll also see things like extra small devices, medium devices, large devices, and extra large devices, and even more breakdowns. These are not strictly defined values, but they're just commonly used practices. And what I want to be very careful to say here is commonly used does not mean best. If you come to me and ask me, Carmen, which one's the best one? I don't have an answer for you. I'm sorry. I have two reasons for that. Number one, I prefer this one mostly because I like having less CSS to maintain. But depending on the website, your needs may vary. And second, who knows how things are going to change in the next 5 years? You never know what we can expect from best practices. So whenever people ask me what is the best way to do it, what I will always say is, if you choose one, be consistent and stick with it. That's the best practice, consistency. So let's do some Q&A, shall we? Let me make this larger. I love that question. Me can't spell. So, what is the primary purpose of media breakpoints in responsive web design? To change the website's color scheme on different devices, to adjust the layout and content for different screen sizes, to increase the website's loading speed on mobile devices, to add new features for desktop users. While y'all are answering this, me Can't Spell, I want to answer your question with a question. You're saying, wouldn't going for the one with more breakpoints be more accessible? I'm going to ask you. It sounds like you expect it to be more accessible, so I'm going to ask, why is it more accessible? Since I'm not trying to like challenge you or call you out. I'd love to hear what you think. What makes more breakpoints more accessible? It's a good question. In the meantime, people are saying to adjust the layout and content for different screen sizes. That's correct. Thank you. Which of the following is a commonly used breakpoint for smaller devices like smartphones? 1640, 640, 1200, or 2000? What do we think? But yes, me Can't Spell. Why is more breakpoints more accessible? 640, thank you. Next question. Which of the following is not typically considered a common breakpoint in modern responsive design? Not considered a common breakpoint. 768 for tablets, 1024 for small desktops, 480 for large smartphones, and 6,000 really large device. Yep, number 4, thank you. So more people who have more varied size devices can access our content in a more responsive and intended way. So I would actually argue that if your design is responsive enough, then you don't really need to be changing stuff around that much. And in terms of accessibility, as someone who is a little neurodivergent, by little I mean a lot, when I'm resizing my windows and the CSS changes like 30 times, that can be overwhelming. Or if I accidentally rotate my phone and then I can't find the menu, that's overwhelming. So as long as your design is responsive enough, I'd say that's much more important in terms of accessibility than having lots of breakpoints. How much are you changing when declaring breakpoints? I'm starting to understand why style sheets can get long. Yeah. Well, declaring, how much are you changing? Well, we've seen it already. Font sizes, the number of columns and grids, the number of items per row in a flex box, font sizes. Gosh, what else? What else are we changing? Whether to show the menu at the top, the nav bar, or hide it in one of those burger menus, the ones with the 3 lines. Actually, can I do that here? By the way, do you all want to see something fun? Let me bring up the dev tools. Y'all know how much I love the dev tools. Look at the menu for Free Code Camp, by the way. You see this here? Burger menu? La, la, la. Look. The burger menu now says the word menu. Was that almost a cackle? I resent that. I would say it was a mirthful laugh. Menu. Look at what happens when it gets smaller. Now it's a burger menu. But check this out. See this button here in the dev tools? Firefox has its own as well. This is the device toolbar. Oh, y'all, this is fun. I love it. It doesn't look great. Let me just zoom out just a tiny bit without anybody getting mad at me. Okay. This allows us to change the resolution we're working with. So we can see here 400 by 809. Was that due to a breakpoint or due to responsive design? Both. Remember, breakpoints are part of responsive design. So, can you see my menu? Please tell me you can see the menu, please. No, you can't. Okay, fine. I will describe it to you. When I click on this responsive drop-down menu, I can see iPhone SE, iPhone XR, iPhone 12 Pro, iPhone 14 Pro Max, Pixel 7, Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus, iPad Mini, Surface Pro. I'm just reading a bunch of them. Surface Pro 7, Galaxy Z Fold 5, Asus. I never know how to pronounce it. I go with Asus. ZenBook Fold, Samsung Galaxy A51. This is fantastic because it allows you to select which device you want to test it. So, hey, why don't you all join me in seeing how the Free Code Camp website looks on an iPhone 12 Pro? Ta-da! See this button? I just rotated my iPhone. See this button? Lets us take, zoom. Oh, cool. I thought it was for screenshots. Never mind. It also allows me to simulate what, can you see the cursor? Yeah. What the touch stuff looks like. Anyway, super cool. You can simulate different devices all in the DevTools. You don't need to get a specific device for everything. Is there any reason not to make different desktop and mobile versions other than financial? I mean, both responsive for screen size, but a separate designs. That's a question more for design. For designers, sorry. If your app has a specific design from a designer that requires a separate style sheet, then do that. So what did I mean by if your content is responsive enough, then you don't need more breakpoints? Well, yeah, like look at this. There's only just eyeballing it. Hold on. Because you're saying if your content, you don't need more breakpoints. Okay. Let me rotate my iPhone again. Okay. So check out the Free Code Camp website, right? Let me just bring back responsive. Okay, so that I can adjust it. So check it out. Right now, it says Free Code Camp and there's the menus. But once I expand this a little bit, and by a little, I mean a lot. Let me just hide the mobile dev tools and expand this some more. There's a breakpoint here. Notice that the accessibility didn't change. If my design is responsive enough, then I don't need more breakpoints because I just need the one. Because once it gets small enough, look at how it responds. Fluid, modern, responsive design webs relies on more breakpoints to adapt smoothly. Well, no, using relative units allows that to adapt the most smoothly. Let's see. I like this question. You mean like an subdomain for mobile? YouTube does it, kind of forced to, I guess. So my guess about YouTube is something ads. They have a separate web app for watching YouTube on your phone, and I bet it has to do with ads. Call me a cynic. Not Synack. Synack is the one answering the question. Sorry. I find breakpoints good for when you need very different changes. Exactly. Thank you. You put this so much better than me. For example, you're going from one column layout to horizontal layout or changing words to icons and menus. Yep. All right. We never checked our answers, did we? Because they're correct. Pat. We got one more lesson today. And that is mobile first approach. And it's what we were talking about earlier. As in, just let me have a sip of water. Me can't spell your question is killing me in a good way, and I'm going to come back to it in a second. Let's talk about mobile first approach. Usually, since we're working on a computer, we design our websites to look good on a computer, and then we're like, oh gosh, I guess I should design it for mobile, and then we start looking at the mobile design. Mobile first really goes like, you know what? There's no such thing as a big computer. I'm going to design this for a mobile phone first, and then go bigger from that. Since, and I already told you all this, I believe most users now use the internet through phones. So it's a good approach. Remember, you're thinking of your users first, your investors later. Anyway, performance optimization is also a great reason to think of mobile first, because you're thinking about how much, mobile networks are not always the best, or they're not always as good as a nice cable network, which is what I have right now. So you want to focus on that as well. And also thinking about what we really need to have on our website. What is essential, right? We're thinking about SEO or search engine optimization, you might recall. Google likes mobile-friendly websites. In fact, I forget what it's called. What is their thing called? Their lighthouse thing. What is it called? Page Speed Insights? Is that correct? Yep. Check this out. So Google offers a service called Page Speed Insights, which allows you to put in a URL. Let me think of one. I'm not going to put my own because I don't want myself to be shamed live on the internet. Well, I know, Free Code Camp. Let's see how good Free Code Camp does on Page Speed Insights. So check this out. So Google is now analyzing both on mobile and on desktop. So we can see, for example, it took 7 seconds to do what is. Don't worry about the insights themselves. We're just looking at like how general it is, how good generally it is in terms of things like performance issues, accessibility, and a whole bunch of other stuff. But notice it tested on mobile first, because Google knows that most of us are using the internet on our phones. Where was I? Oh, you know what? I want to come back to your question, Meekensville. So breakpoints are part of responsive design, but it's better to have normal responsive design over breakpoint responsive design. Breakpoints are a part of responsive design. Yes. Normal, no such thing as normal. Don't think of it as one over the other. Think of them complementing each other. Having lots of breakpoints means more code to maintain. One is not better than the other. I'm sorry. I know that this is annoying that I can't just be like, this is the best way to do it, because the best way to do it is going to change in 5 minutes. And there's no current best way. You need to think, when developing a website and making it responsive and accessible, you need to think of two things. What is going to make my life easier to maintain this website? And while balancing that with what is going to be the best user experience for people loading my website. And if you can balance the two of those the best, because you are going to have to update your website. You're not a dentist. You can't keep a website from 2004. It's a joke. That's probably an old joke by now. I feel like most doctors don't have designs from like 2008. Anyway, no offense if you're a doctor. There's no best approach here. It's not breakpoints versus responsive design. The more breakpoints you have, like I said, I mean, even like, remember what I said about me getting overwhelmed with the CSS changing a whole bunch as I resized my window. Think of it from my perspective. Notice that every time I come to teach you all, and like, hang on, right now the screen size is at 100%. This is how I see the website on a day-to-day basis. Look at the editor. Okay. Now I have to zoom in far enough so that the text is side to side, but watch what happens. If there's too much, then the preview is down here, which is great if you're reading the website. But if you're showing it to learners, it makes it a bit overwhelming for me to be like, code change. And then I have to zoom down. Then I have to scroll down here to show you the change. Too many breakpoints can be bad. This is not a criticism of FreeCodeCamp CSS. The intended use for FreeCodeCamp is for you to use it on your own, after all. Just an example. Media queries are kind of like functions, and then you nest more CSS within them. No, I'm going to be strict here and say they're not functions, they're rules. That's why it's an apt rule, because it's saying, hey, I'm here to lay down the rule. The rule is once the width is 1024 pixels, then do this. So not a function. Think of it more, if you want to think of it in terms of programming stuff, it's more of an if statement. If width is bigger than 1024, do this. Mobile first. Oh yeah, and so we were saying before, we've got this HTML here. Base styles for mobile, remember we were saying this before. Styles for tablets and styles for desktops. So one at a time. Wait a minute. Taking notes, I love it. Also, is that an Undertale photo? It looks cool. Conditionals, I like that. Yes, they're conditionals with have CSS code block under them. Might be a better way to think of it. Yeah, love it. Let's do some Q&A and then do a lot of questions. So scroll. What is the primary focus of mobile first approach in responsive web design? Designing for desktop screens and then adapting for mobile, creating separate websites for mobile and desktop users, prioritizing mobile design and progressively enhancing for larger screens, or focusing solely on mobile design and ignoring desktop users. What do we think? Oh, you love Undertale. I do too. It's one of my favorite games. Number 3, very good. Next, how does mobile first approach typically utilize CSS media queries? By using max width to scale down for smaller screens, by using mid width to add styles for larger screens, by creating separate style sheets for each device type, or by avoiding media queries altogether. People are saying number 2. Oh, I love that there's lots of Undertale fans here. I'm very excited for chapter 5 next week. Anyway, which of the following is not a primary benefit of the mobile first approach? Improved performance optimization, better alignment with current usage trends, simplified design process for complex features, or enhanced content prioritization. What do we think? 1, but it makes me sad. Improved performance optimization. So let's check our answers. Well, unfortunately, that's not correct. So performance optimization is actually something that is a benefit from mobile first approach because, for example, you're using smaller images or fewer images. So people are saying number 2, better alignment with current web usage trends. And that sounds better to me because remember, most of the internet right now is used on a mobile device. Let's see. No, might be more challenging rather than a beneficial. Oh, people are saying it's number 3. Simplified design process for complex features. There we go. Thank you all. Pat. So I think that's everything for today. What else have we got? Scroll to the top. Nope, you just got some labs and workshops. If you have any questions, of course, bring them. However, before we go, let's look at what we'll be doing next week. Oh, I'm so jealous of y'all. You'll get to do CSS variables. Jess is going to be back on Monday to do variables with y'all. Y'all are going to love it. It's super fun. Let's do some Q&A. If you have any questions, drop them. And if not, I will go through diligently and answer your questions, Mel. The MDN docs say it's only due to older browsers not fully implementing media queries. That only is used due to older browsers not fully implementing media queries. If media type is included, it may match screen and ignore the min size, the styles. Even if the condition doesn't match, should we not bother to include the media type? No. No. Unless you really care about. So I would include it, but that's because I want to add printing styles to my website. That's it. In the MDN docs for media, there's a section on security. Since media retrieves information about the device, it can be abused and used to identify a device a person uses. If you're working for a company that wishes to create a new modern website, you may still have the legacy version available and want to redirect users you suspect is on an older device. Is it still possible to make good guess at the device being used, even if the values are fudged by the browser, or do the styles only get applied when the client with the server never seeing any value? Good question, because I care a lot about privacy. Let me put it this way. If always, when collecting user data, my question to you is, why? What do you need that data for? I don't know about you, but I don't need to know the gender of the person that is using my website. I don't need to know what operating system they're using. So yeah, besides, there are laws. This goes more into the JavaScript side of things, so bear with me. When you make an HTTP request, something called what is it called? The stamp of the device. What is that called? There's like a string of characters that denote like what kind of device you're using that gets sent and what IP address. What is that called? What is that called? It's called like the timestamp or something. No, user agent. Yes. Thank you, Etta. User agent. The user agent is sent. Is that always included in the response? Hopefully not, but sometimes it is. It mostly is. And like I said, the question is always why. I'm really glad I live in Europe and we have the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, because I don't want people to know what device I'm using. How can you abuse the information of a mobile size? I'm surely there are mobile phones that share the same size, right? Like my phone has a tempered glass from a different phone entirely. How can you abuse the size of? You can hide information. Like you can hide information, important information. That's a dark pattern, as it were. That's something that comes to mind. But I'm not going to encourage y'all to do bad things. Can I take a quick look at the certification project? Yes, however, we are out of time, so it would be helpful for me if you were to tell me what exactly you need to know about the certification project. I mean, I'm going to open it up anyway. Do media queries get evaluated first to determine the device and rules to apply, or are they not treated in any special way? Yes. So remember, @rules are applied by the browser before the CSS. So the @rule applies rules accordingly. Is it good practice to put your media queries at the bottom of the style sheet styles outside of any query acting as the default with the queries overriding them? Yeah, so definitely put your media queries below your standard rules, but all the way at the bottom, I'm not a fan. But bad news is everybody does it differently. There's no best practice. I'm sorry. I asked ChatGPT. No! Sorry, I'm just kidding. If a smart fridge has its own media type, it said it would be classified as a touchscreen, so it would be type of screen. I was very disappointed. Not a question, a statement. Never a bad thing. I agree. But here's a statement to your statement. Why are you disappointed that a fridge doesn't have its own media type? Because a screen is a screen, right? So yeah, why are you disappointed? Because I would challenge that. I think it's good that a fridge is a screen. DPI is an old printing term for how many dots are drawn per inch. Why do media queries use this measurement for screen resolution, min resolution DPI, and not use pixels? I don't think I have an answer. Dots per inch. Hang on. Is that for resolution? No, it's not pixel density. That's pixel density. It's different. So you might want to have like, well, hang on. It says resolution right there. I don't actually know. Let me answer that by saying something disappointing. I have never in my life seen somebody use DPI or minimum resolution. Viewport width is way more important. Is it common to split up large style sheets and link multiple on one web page? Yes and no. So this is going to be a bit of a ramble. Right. Let me answer this first for the developer, and then I'll answer it for the website. For a developer, splitting up your code into multiple files is helpful because it could be easier to find. However, think of it now from a browser perspective. When you open a page in a browser, for every file you download, every image, every font, every style sheet, that's a different download you have to make. The more downloads, the more internet connections you have to make to the outside world. That does slow things down. So what do people do? They use what are called bundlers, or if you're a little bit more old school like me, you might say a compiler, which are programs that take those multiple CSS files and smush them into one big one at the time of deployment. That is when your website goes from on your computer to the server. So is it common? Kinda. It's common to do a lot of things. It is one of the ways that is used. Why not use JavaScript and find out what style sheet is needed? For that reason, for that very specific reason, because now you got to download a JavaScript file and a style sheet. And then you got to run the JavaScript. No. Put it all on one big style sheet. Some websites even put all of the CSS into the HTML itself. Do you have any tips for people that study alone? Can be a bit boring at times. Yes, I cannot study for the life of me alone. I am a big fan of body doubling. That is to have somebody in the room with me studying, or there are lots of websites, Discord servers, or communities where people just hang out on a call and study together. That helps me a lot. Is that all of the questions? I think so. Is this why PHP is still popular? Because the server smushes the right content into fewer pages? Not fewer pages, but fewer... you don't have to make like hundreds of HTML files. So, is it faster to have all of the CSS on the HTML that it is to have a separate file? It depends. Think about it. This gets a little bit into how into how browsers work. Browser makes what's called an HTTP request. It goes, hey, server, what you got for me? Server's like, would you look at what I have? Here's some HTML. And then you open the browser opens the HTML and it's like, oh, shoot, it needs some CSS. Yo, server, can I have some CSS? Right? And it downloads that. Now, if you have all of the CSS on the HTML, it's like, yo, server, what you got for me? Server's like, big thing. It takes longer between you asking for it and getting the HTML. So what some websites do is they will have the most important CSS in the HTML and then download the rest of the CSS separately. If you have one large with JS, HTML, and CSS smushed together, is there a chance it would take longer due to not displaying until all packets arrive? You exactly answered what I was saying. Yep, exactly. So most important first. Okay, we are well over time. One of y'all wanted me to look at the certification project. Where is it? This is it? I think so. This is certification project. Yeah. As always, build a technical documentation page. We'll have one of the projects that you need to fulfill in order to get the certification from Free Code Camp. User stories. Scroll all the way down. Your tests, as always, apply your test-driven development. Can't solve it for y'all. That would be spoiling the fun. And we're out of time. So I think that's it, isn't it? Next week, we'll be back to do some variables. Don't think I'm missing anything. I answered all of the questions. I'm quite proud of myself for getting through all of those. Edda, as always, thank you for being amazing and helping me. And that wraps it up for today, my friends. I hope it was a good week of learning. And I wish you all of the best. And remember, don't despair if you fall behind. It's a lot. And you're not going to understand everything off the top of your head. It was a lot of fun today. I wish you a restful weekend. Remember, take some time to rest and just let everything stew. And until then, I'll see you next time. Bye for now.